If you're enjoying Broadway Drumming 101, make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're there, take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review. It really helps us grow and brings this content to even more musicians and fans of Broadway. We're also on YouTube. Head over to our channel, search for Broadway Drumming 101, hit subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon for notifications. You'll get access to even more incredible videos designed to inspire and educate. Join us today, and thank you for listening.
Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Mike Ramsey from Brooklyn, New York. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me.
We have a couple things in common, I guess. We both had a little stint at Ain't Too Proud. You were one of the percussion subs, and of course, I was the drummer for the show, but we both agree that it should not have closed so soon. But here we are. We're doing our thing now, and you are currently in a room, I see, and you're at NYU. You do some things at NYU. Tell me what you do at NYU right now.
That's correct. I just finished playing for a dance class here at Steinhardt, and we're kind of commandeering one of the small classrooms here. Hopefully, no one will come in during our interview.
Like Professor Ramsey.
I think that, they have a new building a few blocks away where most of the music classes are now. So these rooms have been pretty quiet the last year and a half, and I sometimes come in here to get stuff done. So hopefully we're good.
So you're Brooklyn born and raised. You've been in New York all your life, I suppose?
No, actually, I've been in Brooklyn since 2007. I was born in Howard County, Maryland.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and we moved down to Central Virginia when I was about a year and a half. So really, I grew up outside of Richmond, Virginia, and left there when I was 17. Went to college at West Virginia University for undergrad. Went to Rutgers University in New Jersey for grad school, and then slowly made my way up to the city, and I was in Brooklyn in 2007. I've been there ever since.
What made you decide to play drums or percussion when you were younger?
I can remember in 6th grade, we had to sign up for instruments, and that was like the late 80s, early 90s. And I don't know if you remember, but all these saxophone players were super popular, like David Sanborn and Dave Koz and all these cats. They had like TV shows and stuff, and I really wanted to play the saxophone, but luckily I'm a bit of a procrastinator and I signed up late. The only thing that was left was the percussion kit, the little rental Ludwig snare drum, vacuum practice pad, and glockenspiel. And I think I already kind of banged on pots and pans in the house, so it fit me, but had I gotten that sheet in on time, I probably would have tried saxophone.
Do you play saxophone now?
Not at all. No. It all worked out. It was meant to be.
So have you ever picked up a sax and tried it, or can you play at all?
I did do, my undergrad is music ed, so we had woodwind methods and brass methods, but my best instrument was trumpet, brass.
Did you play drum set in junior high and high school, or just were you really focused on percussion?
We did. So 6th grade was the first year, which was, just school band, snare drum, glockenspiel. And since I got through that first year, my parents rented me a drum kit, and I started taking drum set lessons, in the 7th grade. It was a rental kit, and I had to do it for several years. And I think it was when I got to the 11th grade, bought some real drums and really got serious about it.
What were you listening to back then?
That's a good question. I mean, probably just pop music on the radio.
David Sanborn?
Pop music on the radio, and pretty quickly got into the school jazz band kind of thing. So we had a pretty good music program. I can remember being in 8th grade and going to see Chick Corea Electric Band with Dave, because it was someone we had heard of from our band director. He was sharing music with us. So we got into some pretty diverse styles pretty quickly.
Now in Richmond, in places outside of the Northeast, there's a big focus on marching bands. Were you ever in marching bands or drum corps or anything like that?
So my experience with marching band is kind of interesting because our particular school, we weren't a drum corps style marching band in my high school. We did do marching band, but we kind of did we did it in a different way. One year, our band director was a Buffett guy, like a parrot head, Jimmy Buffett guy. So we did a whole year where the marching band show was a tribute to Jimmy Buffett.
Really?
We did a year where we did Beatles songs. And the guy who taught the drum line was a really great drum set player in town, Jody Boyd, really great drum set player in Richmond, Virginia. And yeah, I mean, he was an amazing drummer, but he wasn't a drum corps guy, So, for example, I tell people, like, one of the cadences we played, the bass drums and the snare drums would just keep a groove, and then I would just improvise on the quads. We'd loop it, and then there would be a break, and it would start over, and we just did some kind of like wacky things that you wouldn't normally find in a drum line.
Wow.
So it was a cool experience. But of course, once I went away to college to WVU, West Virginia, these guys were from the cadets and the crossmen, and it was drum corps style. And I couldn't play an open roll cleanly. I had to really learn that style. Yeah, it was a kind of a real eye-opening experience when I went away to college.
Sounds like it was more like a jazz drum line than than a traditional thing where you had to memorize and be very precise and play the same thing.
A little bit, yeah. It was different. It was different.
Did you ever play jazz, based on that, just improving, and were your chops like kind of elevated because you got to think freely?
I think so. I played in the jazz band throughout high school and college. As a young drummer, it's a little bit, I can remember being put on the spot when they go, okay, drum solo. And it's kind of like, what? It was a good experience to have.
Now, why West Virginia University and not Rutgers for undergrad?
That's a good question. So I had another teacher named Jay Armentrout in Richmond who's passed away. And he was an alumnus of West Virginia. He had gone to school there. West Virginia has had a really huge percussion program. They also had something called the World Music Institute. So we had a steel band. We had a guy from Trinidad named Elie Manette who was building the pans and tuning them. There was a guy from Ghana, West Africa, teaching West African drumming. There was a person who came in and taught Indonesian gamelan. They did Japanese taiko drumming. So they did all these different things. Once I kind of went to take my audition and visited the campus and saw all the things they had going on there, it really drew me in, and I decided that was the place for me.
And you play any of that stuff?
I was exposed to all of that stuff in undergrad. We did a little bit of everything. So I wouldn't turn around and say, hey, I do this or that necessarily, but I like to think of myself as being pretty versatile. So
now I know you subbed at The Lion King. Did any of those things that you learned in undergrad help prepare you for the things that you have to do in The Lion King?
For sure. That was my first real exposure to West African drumming, West African culture, and hand drumming. So making the basic sounds and playing, the basic rhythms and things like that. So that absolutely helped me for subbing over at Lion King and other shows.
Now, I've only watched Carter McLean play the drum set book. I remember seeing The Lion King in like 1996 when it first came out. And are there four percussionists or there are two percussionists on the side?
So on the side, they have the two boxes. So there's one and two. And then down below is Carter, the drum set, but then they have an additional two percussionists playing marimba and other small percussion and drums.
Wow. Have you subbed on all four?
Not yet. I've just done the two boxes for Rolando and Junior. So it's Rolando Morales Matos is the house right. If you're sitting in the crowd and you look to the right, that's Rolando. And then Junior Gabu Wedderburn is house left. So if you're sitting in the audience and you look to the left, you're going to see Junior playing.
Now, how different are those books?
Yeah, they're completely different because a lot of, for example, there are some songs where one person is playing a shaker and maybe like one drum, and then the other person is playing a melody, on multiple hand drums, congas, and then vice versa. So like if you play both, if you sub on both, sometimes you forget and you just go, oh, this is this song. Oh no, you get it, So they're all kind of like interlocking kind of thing. So you just have to keep track of which side you're on.
So in Rolando's side, what instruments are in his little section?
So Rolando's side, he has the core of it is he's got 5 tuned drums, right? So originally they were thought of as being congas and also alogo drums, which are West African drums, but really you can think of them as 5 tuned drums. So they're tuned to specific pitches, and he plays melodic parts there. He's also got a djembe, and he's got a dundun, and he has timbales. In addition to that, he's got a ton of different, what we kind of call that the classical side. So he's got tam-tams and gongs. He has a lot of suspended cymbals that he plays, triangle, tambourine. It's a lot of different, just small little, effects and colors that he plays. He plays log drum. It's a ton of stuff over there. So
and on the other side?
The other side is a little bit more focused on the sort of hand drumming thing. Junior has 4 tuned drums, congas, and djembe, dundun. He plays the squeeze drum. He plays a lot of shakers, kashishi. He also plays berimbau, which is like an Afro-Brazilian instrument, a bowed instrument that kind of has that twangy sound. That's an instrument that he plays. And they both sides, of course, play the taiko drums for the stampede.
Wow.
For the what are those? The wildebeests, the stampede.
Okay.
No, we're playing taiko drums, which are.
That's incredible, man. I stuff I never knew. When you want to sub for somebody like this, what do you do to say, what, can I sub for you, Rolando? What did you do?
Okay, so that's a good question. The connection that I had with Rolando was coming from Rutgers University. So at Rutgers, we had this ensemble. It was kind of, when I went there as a grad student, the professor, Shi Wu, she knew a little bit of my background from West Virginia. She knew that we had an African ensemble at West Virginia. And I was traveling back and forth to Ghana with my professor. So she said, bring drums. So the next time you go to Ghana with Pascal, my professor, his name is Dr. Pascal Yao Young, and he used to take us in the summers to go. So she said, bring drums. So I bought a ton of drums, and I shipped them directly to Newark Airport and picked them up and took them over to Rutgers, and we started a group. In 2004, we did a big show that went to the Percussive Art Society convention, PASIC. And before we went to PASIC, we did a show at Rutgers, and this, one of the adjuncts at Rutgers, Chris Devaney from the Philly Orchestra, he saw this show and he was like, I don't know, I think you've spoken with Grant Braddock. He was like, yo, Grant, Mike, you guys need to meet Rolando. So, you know, it was little by little from there. Initially, I was going to go and meet Rolando immediately, but I ended up leaving town for a little while, moved around. And then when I came back, I just, called up Rolando, and yeah, that was the start of me getting in there. But so it took a while though, because when I I guess that was August of 2007, I called up Rolando and he was like, I don't need anybody. I'm good to go. And he said, you just gotta wait, and we'll be in touch. And so probably about 9 months later, he said, I still don't need anybody, but Junior needs someone. So I'm gonna, put you in touch with him. I guess that was the spring of '08. I started watching Junior's book. And that was my first show ever. So I stalked him. I probably watched 10 times over the course. Yeah, over the course of about 2 or 3 months.
Wow. I guess you would. I mean, I whenever I had to sub, it takes me at least a month just to feel comfortable to get started playing. It takes me a while for me to get things, but something like that, what you're describing, is it because of the difficulty of the book, or it's just really involved and you wanted to make sure that you got it right, or both?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. And also the third part is that was my first time doing it. So I was kind of, you know what I mean? If I were to do something like that now, I think I would probably be able to do it a little quicker, but that was my first time. So I really wanted to get it right. And even after I started playing with Junior for many years, I would follow him around. On Mondays, he used to play for a dance class in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, Monday evenings. So I would go and I would play with him, so I could just absorb his style. He's an amazing, amazing drummer. Both Junior and Rolando are great. It took a little bit, but I think I've kind of copped some of the magic that just a little tiny bit of sort of like his vibe.
When you subbed there for the first time, did you get notes from the conductor, and how did you respond to them?
That's a good question. That's going way back. That would have been 16 years ago. And I can remember, because where Junior's box is, you have to go up through the lobby and up, way just to get to his box is far away. So I can remember, traveling back down to the pit and tracking down the conductor. And to be honest with you, I don't remember all of what he said, but I remember I had probably already been told by someone just to smile and say thank you and try to jot everything down. So, yeah.
Did you make any big mistakes where it was like silent and then you hit like a gong sound, or?
Not that I can remember. It's totally possible, though. It's a traumatic experience. That's good. It is.
Has that ever happened when you subbed on a show where you weren't supposed to play and then you hit something? I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, everything has happened to me. I've broken stuff. I'm like a bull in a china cabinet. Especially if it's not your setup, you just, and then, but luckily I've been able to survive.
So those were your first two subbing experiences. Did you do anything right after that since you got your confidence, or did you take some time out to do other things?
Well, I was living in New York and just kind of figuring out how to survive as a freelancer. I mean, even to this day, I consider myself like a freelance musician who plays on Broadway. I don't necessarily say like, oh, I'm a Broadway musician, but I guess it's the same thing, but it's like there are some weeks where I get 8 shows and there are some weeks where I get 0 shows as a sub, and some weeks when I get 2 or 4, it just depends on the week. And so you have to be prepared to pay your bills doing other things, so for example, early mornings, I'm usually playing for dance classes. That's like the college thing. Afternoons, sometimes I'm teaching lessons or doing teaching artist work, after school programs, things like that. And in the evening, if I'm not playing a show, oftentimes I'll be playing for adult dance classes. Things like at the Alvin Ailey Extension, or Kumbe is another dance studio in Brooklyn where adults take like a Afro-Brazilian samba class, for example, and the teacher will hire 2 or 3 drummers to play live in the room. So that's what I was doing at that time, just figuring out all those other gigs. And really since then it's been like as a sub, just trying to get, okay, who can I play for, because it's not, you can't just, okay, I want to sub there, it's like, you got to wait till someone calls you or needs you,
So knowing that you had to do so many different things, and I get a lot of people asking about how do I go and play drums on a Broadway show, and so many people are focused on, I just want to play Broadway. What advice would you give to someone who's coming to New York and just wants to play Broadway?
Well, so I'll quote a good friend of mine, mentor, someone who I've subbed for a lot, Javier Diaz. I can remember being at Rutgers. This is going way, way back. And he came to Rutgers to do a clinic with some high school kids at a camp that was happening at Rutgers. And there was a kid there that was a high school senior, hot shot, New Jersey high schooler, had been studying a lot. And he raised his hand confidently and said, I'm going to be going to music school, going to college next year, and I want to play on Broadway. What can I do to become a Broadway percussionist? What do I do? And Javier's answer was like, you just have to focus on becoming a good musician, becoming a good player on your instrument. And at the time, I took it as the one angle is the obvious one is that, like, whenever you do get the opportunity, you got to be able to play. You got to be able to sit down or stand up and play the thing. You got to be good. But the second part of it, really looking back on it years later, is that, like, it's not an automatic that it's not an automatic that you're going to get a gig on Broadway. So you have to be able to play your instrument and be a musician in order to do all the other things to survive. That's kind of how I look at it, because and also, as an instrumentalist, you just have to, I love the drums. I love percussion. I'm going to play that music, whether it's in a Broadway theater or on the street corner or in a club or whatever. Like, that's what I want to do. That's what I love.
A colleague of ours suggested I ask you a certain question about djembe, since you are an experienced djembeist, if that's the right word, djembe player, like, how do you approach reading ink for that instrument for Broadway shows?
That's a good question. So I will say djembe is a traditional instrument from West Africa. It's coming from, interestingly, it's coming traditionally from places like Guinea, Mali, Ivory Coast, Senegal. And there's a very specific way of playing the djembe in the traditional way. So that's one thing. And then, of course, the djembe has become popularized in so many other styles of music because it's such a versatile instrument. You've got the bass is a super low sound. You've got the slaps are a super high sound, everything in between. You can do a lot with just that one instrument. So it's become very popular. I don't consider myself to be like a master at the traditional stuff, although I have studied it. And that's really great being in New York. You can study with a lot of different players. But the thing I'll say more broadly about just hand drumming in general is that sometimes the ink that's written for those hand drums is you have to turn it into something. I think it's true of a lot of rhythm section instruments. You know what I mean? It's like you get slashes and you have to make something out of it. And sometimes you'll get specific rhythms, but if you just played exactly what was written, it would sound like da 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 da. You know what I mean? And it's up to the player to sort of create the nuance. A lot of times that's if you have a multi-drum setup, you're talking about something like a melody. But even on one drum with all the different sounds that you can get playing dynamically so that you create something that's like a musical thing.
Very thought-provoking and very true. A lot of times you get those slashes and you have to interpret the music on your own, but that comes from a lot of experience and knowing what to play in the right musical setting.
Right.
And speaking of settings, you've played in orchestras and different ensembles. One of them was the Exit 9 percussion group. I think you've worked with Peter Sala on that.
That is true. Pete Sala was in the Exit 9 group. There were a lot of people in that group over the years. Grant Braddock, again, was in that group. Pete Sala was in that group. I want to name everybody. Kevin Romansky, who now lives in Taiwan. He's a professor in Taiwan. Ed Choi, who now lives in Seoul, South Korea. He's the principal percussionist in the Seoul Philharmonic. He was in that group. Ken Riemann, who's Peter Martin. Peter Martin is now in the Third Coast Percussion Ensemble. And, you know, actually, I should say there are a few others that joined after I kind of left. So I'm probably leaving some people out as well. Exit 9 Percussion Group started with the grad students at Rutgers back in 2001 or 2002. And so what we started doing was, this is the beginning of my U-Haul, my U-Haul career. The first thing we did was for an elementary school concert, like an assembly in the morning. And our professor, she said, hey, we're going to put this thing together. You're going to go and do a show for the students, you know. And the repertoire that we picked was insane. It was like, you know, 2 marimbas, a xylophone, vibraphone, a ton of tom-toms and all this stuff. We had to go and rent a U-Haul truck just to go 15 minutes down the road to an elementary school, you know. It was cool to play all that music, but eventually we figured out for the school shows, okay, we're going to play, you know, 1 djembe, a couple stools with sticks, a bucket, you know, we made it all fit into one minivan. So, you know, we figured that out for the school shows, but we did a lot of different things. We played kind of contemporary chamber music. We went and did a competition down in Maryland and won that competition. It was pretty incredible experience. We went to South Korea. Ed Choi got a couple of gigs over there, traveled around. We did, not Seattle, but we were in Washington State for a gig at a college. And of course, like I said, all this, you know, we were doing all this big time kind of percussion ensemble stuff with the crazy setups. But at the same time, we were also doing school shows, you know. So that was like having the kids clap the rhythm and, you know, you come up and try the djembe and just doing all the different things.
So Exit 9, for those that don't know, that there's a meaning behind that. What's the exit? What does that mean?
Exit 9 off the New Jersey Turnpike is the exit for New Brunswick, which is where Rutgers University is located. Yeah.
And you,
I don't remember who came up with that, but
were you the one driving the U-Haul truck to these different places at the beginning?
often I was, yeah. I was a willing volunteer.
So driving the U-Haul truck, is there any advice for people driving trucks on the Belt Parkway?
I do. I'm guessing they've heard from Pete Sala. So this was actually not, it wasn't an Eggs and Nine gig, but in that probably 2002, 2003 year, we took the entire Rutgers University percussion group to play out on Long Island at like a day of percussion. So it was now, this was even more instruments because this was the large percussion ensemble. So we had probably 2 or 3 marimbas, vibraphones, xylophones, all of the instruments. And our professor went and rented a U-Haul, and I was the driver, and Pete Sala was he was my navigator, really, is what he was. And so that was before the days of GPS or anything. We just had a printout of the MapQuest directions. And so whoever it was that printed out the MapQuest directions, there was probably something you had to click on to say, I'm driving a truck. It gave the directions for someone driving in a passenger car. So we went over the Verrazano Bridge and got onto the Belt Parkway. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that route, but we're going along the Belt Parkway. Everything was going swimmingly, but as you get further into Long Island, you start to pass these underpasses that I could feel them as the driver. I was just feeling really kind of a little tight. We're just barely making it through here, It turns out the Belt Parkway has a restriction for trucks. You're not supposed to be on there as a truck. And I think we saw the signs, but we said they mean like the tractor trailer. They mean the big wheelers, the big ones, the big boys. They don't mean this little U-Haul box truck, but they do mean that too, because eventually we got to an overpass that was a little short, and we caught it. The roof caught it.
Oh no, really?
Yeah, it peeled back like a can of sardines, the roof of the U-Haul truck.
As a valued subscriber, you'll enjoy early access and a discount to Broadway Bound and Beyond, a musician's guide to building a theater career, coming soon from our imprint, Syncopated Publishing. It's our way of saying thank you. When you subscribe to our site at BroadwayDrumming101.com, you'll get exclusive behind-the-scenes videos that take you into the Broadway pits to see how the magic is really made. It's all there for just $10 a month or $100 a year. Don't miss out.
Oh my God.
It was intense, but I will say that I was able to keep control of the truck, slowed down, got off at the next exit, and we took the surface streets to the venue, and we got there, and the instruments were all unharmed. It was just the truck that had a lot of damage.
But you had no roof on the truck though.
Yeah, it wasn't the whole way. It was probably, a third of the way.
It was peeled back like a sardine can where you could just see a little bit. For those that don't, I'm sure people like, with sardine can, what the hell is that?
Right. Yeah.
Tuna fish. Does anybody peel back though? I'm sorry. I digress. Wow. That's something else. I never knew anybody that actually got caught in one of those things like that.
It was an adventure for sure. And again, Pete Sala was the navigator. So I feel we got through it together. Yeah. Those were crazy times. Those were crazy times.
That's a great story. I mean, sometimes you need to do some crazy things to make life more interesting, but I wouldn't suggest doing that to make things more interesting.
Yeah.
Did it cost you money did you have to repair? Did you have insurance or what?
So it was that was taken care of by our professor.
Really?
Special thanks to our professor, because I don't even know the details of it other than we returned the truck and Professor Wu went and took care of it. So I thank her very much for that.
Thank you, Professor Wu.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what are some do's and don'ts for those that want to be professional musicians? That's one don't.
At least don't have it under your name. you know, make sure someone else is responsible for the damages.
Being in New York since 2007, what are a few things that someone should do if they want to be a successful professional musician in New York City?
Good question. So let's see. I would say probably a lot of the things that others have said. Be on time, be early in order to be on time, be well prepared, be able to get along with people. Those are the do's, I would say. For the don'ts, especially when it comes to the subbing thing, you don't want to do your own thing. When you're the sub, your job is to make it seem like the regular is in. So don't do your own thing. That's important. It's tough because I would say something like try to be don't talk too much, don't do this or that. But I think also it's important to be yourself. So really just try to be yourself and don't do anything too bad.
Now, you subbed for Javier and Roger at Ain't Too Proud?
No, I just subbed for Javier's book at Ain't Too Proud. Yeah. So I had the pleasure of playing with Roger a bunch.
And you had to learn the drum part at the very end.
Yeah.
I look over. So there are times, the good thing about when you subbed is that when you got up on stage and I looked and like, I didn't know that Javier wasn't in. And I saw somebody on the stage like, who is this? That shows that you've done a great job and you didn't stand out by doing your own thing. You emulated the chair holder, and that's the key for a successful sub on a show. Just to be a great musician, you should try to, if you're going to fill in for somebody, try to emulate their style and sound so that you do them justice, basically.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much for saying that.
Yeah. So did you have to, this is a little side question. Did you have to, are you good at memorizing? Or did you have to have a little cheat sheet on the side in order to play that last part?
Yeah. I remember early on, yeah, there was a cheat sheet. Javier had a cheat sheet up there, I think, like a little.
Yes, he did.
And early on, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, gotta get this. But after a while, that was a pretty straight ahead music. So after a while, I felt like I had it pretty memorized.
Other than The Lion King, Ain't Too Proud, and I'm sure you've done other shows, what are some of the other shows that you've subbed on Broadway, and what were some of the more memorable experiences?
Okay, so I won't do it chronologically. I'll just jump around. Another show that I subbed for Javier on was Once on This Island, which was an incredible experience. It was very intense. There were only 4 musicians in the band, and Javier was playing a hybrid drum kit percussion kind of setup, and he was really responsible for just driving the rhythm the whole show. And there was pretty much 0 click on that show, and it was a 1-act thing, I think. Yeah, it was 1 act, and it was short. I mean, short for being a show. I guess it was probably about 90 minutes, maybe 95 minutes straight through. And there was probably 3 minutes where you weren't doing something.
Wow.
It was super intense. As anybody, but especially as the sub coming in to do it, like there were no even moments to really catch your breath. Those first few shows, eventually you realize, okay, in between this one song, there's 60 seconds to kind of, but when you're just getting in for the first time, it was super intense. But it was really amazing the part he played for that. And that was one that I spent a long time preparing to go in and play.
Did you sub at Beautiful Noise?
That's right. Yeah, I played for Javier at A Beautiful Noise. I subbed for him, and then later he left, and Danny Sadownik took over, and I subbed for Danny as well on that percussion book.
Oh,
That one,
Danny. Danny's great.
Danny sub for Roger. Yeah, that one was way more chill than, because it's like Neil Diamond. It's fun. It's play the songs. So that was a very fun one to sub on.
That's cool. In your years of playing shows and doing other things, have you aligned yourself with any percussion or drum manufacturers? Do you like have any specific manufacturers that you prefer to play?
I have some things that I like. I would say it kind of jumps around the companies. You know what I mean? I like this particular stick and this brush. This particular set of hi-hats I really love, but I have this ride cymbal that's great. I'm not officially affiliated with any companies. At one point, one of my freelance jobs was doing instrument reviews for Modern Drummer. So I told myself, okay, so I have to stay fair and impartial, and unbiased. I'm not affiliated with any companies. But I'm no longer writing for the magazine, so if any company wants to affiliate
Before we got started, I was telling you that I was looking up some information on you, just to get to know some of your background. And I was like, sir, there's a meme of a cat typing on a piano, on a keyboard and going like this. And I was like, man, I can't find very much on Mike. Have you deliberately chosen not to put stuff up, or do you just not feel interested in doing social media or having a website, or doing all the kind of things that a lot of younger people do?
Yeah, well, it's a tough one. It's a little bit of a mixed bag. I do feel that I should have a little bit more of an online presence. So I need some coaching on that. I will say many, many years ago, about 20 years ago, this is probably pre-social media, I went to try and create a website. And I don't know if you remember the 1980 US hockey team, the Miracle on Ice, where they said, do you believe in miracles? There was actually one of the hockey players on that team. His name was Mike Ramsey. So
Oh yeah.
MikeRamsey.com.
That's funny.
A bunch of other domains. So that's just one excuse that, back in the day I said, just move on to the next thing.
Before you go on, there's another Mike Ramsey that is a drummer that is in a Rush cover band.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And he's really good. I'm like, man, this guy sounds just like Neil Peart. I'm like, Jesus. So now you got two people with your name. So you gotta be like the Mike Ramsey.
That's right. Yeah.
Mike Ramsey percussion, Mike Ramsey drums. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you do Instagram, Facebook?
I have an Instagram
MySpace.
No MySpace. I have an Instagram account. I have a Facebook account. It's rare that I post. I do like to use it to see what's happening, what's out there. But sometimes I even don't get a chance to look. You know what I mean? It is very fascinating because it seems like with the younger generation, it's part of I've had, this was not an instrumentalist, but had a performer tell me like, oh yeah, you got to have that's one of the pillars of your career. You have this and this and this. And they were saying, at the time I had 9 followers on Instagram, and, I said 9, and they were like 900, 9,000. I was like, no, 9, and they just thought it was hilarious that I was in the single digit.
The thing is, I think you kept it at 9 because of Exit 9. Everything
right.
revolves around that, man.
Keeping it in the Exit 9.
So I don't want to keep you too much longer. I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat and get to know you, and I appreciate your input on this platform and some of the wisdom that you had to share and some of the experiences. And kids, do not take a truck on the Belt Parkway or on the West Side Highway either. People don't know that too.
Yeah. Thank you
But
very much for having me. Appreciate it.
yes, I'm glad we connected, and hopefully on the next show we will connect again.
Absolutely.
All right, you have a great day, and ladies and gentlemen, Mike Ramsey. I need to have some hand claps at the very end of that.
Thank you.
All right, man. We will talk soon.
Okay, sounds good, man. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. Talk to you later.
All right, see you, man.
Bye.
To continue producing the high-quality podcast you're listening to, publishing engaging newsletter content, and posting YouTube videos, we would appreciate any financial contributions you can make. At this time, we have no advertisers, and we'd like to keep it that way. Our staff is small but growing. We can only produce a show with listener contributions from people like you. There are a couple of ways you can do that. You can sign up to be a monthly or annual subscriber at BroadwayDrumming101.com. You can also contribute any amount you wish through PayPal at paypal.me/BroadwayDrumming101 or through Venmo at BroadwayDrumming101. Or help keep us caffeinated by buying us a cup of coffee or a week's worth at buymeacoffee.com/BD101. That's buymeacoffee.com/BD101. We appreciate any support you can give. Don't forget to subscribe to the Broadway Drumming 101 YouTube page. You'll find more content that isn't featured on the podcast or on the Broadway Drumming 101 Instagram page. Make sure when you subscribe to the YouTube page, you click on the button to be notified when a new video is published.